Hey guys, welcome to Journey of Relaxation. Tonight we trudge through the richly scented halls of the Mughal Empire's grand dining rooms, where the air is thick with the promise of slow-cooked opulence. Imagine yourself stepping barefoot onto polished marble floors, the heavy scent of saffron and rosewater curling around you like a silken shawl. You probably won't survive this without craving something warm, spiced, and utterly decadent, but that's the point. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm always curious about who's joining this slow culinary journey. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge toward the tables that seem to groan under the weight of plates piled high with slow-simmered stews, fragrant pilafs, and bread fresh from the tandoor, its edges just charred enough to offer a smoky crunch. The Mughal Empire, stretching across much of the Indian subcontinent between the early 16th and mid-19th centuries, was famous not just for its monumental architecture, but also for its food slow, rich, and layered with history. Banquets weren't just meals. They were sensory experiences crafted to awe the senses and prolong the moment. This wasn't your quick sandwich grab. You were entering an era where the pace of cooking matched the grandeur of the court, unhurried, deliberate, luxurious. Historians still argue whether the sheer scale of these feasts was more about showcasing imperial power or genuine culinary passion. But either way, the Mughal kitchens operated as engines of slow culinary magic. Imagine a royal feast that might last hours, with dishes arriving one after another, each meticulously prepared over low flames, their flavors unfolding gradually like a well-written poem. The art was not in speed, but in patience. You might find it amusing to think that even the nobles had to wait their turn. Patiently imagine sitting at a gilded table, the faint murmur of courtiers mingling with the clink of spoons, all while you slowly let the rich aromas tantalize your senses before the first bite. The Mughal emperors and their guests didn't just eat, they savored every moment, a stark contrast to today's fast food frenzy. Behind these feasts were countless cooks, slaves, and artisans, who had honed the delicate balance of heat and time. Kitchens buzzed like beehives, yet the secret was always the slow simmer, because great food, especially in the Mughal tradition, couldn't be rushed. It was about coaxing every drop of flavor out of humble ingredients and elevating them to something unforgettable. So as you settle deeper into this tale, picture yourself reclining amid silken cushions, the soft glow of lanterns casting dancing shadows, and a distant tabla beat, marking time to the unhurried rhythm of imperial dining. This is the beginning of your journey through the sleepy meals of the Mughal Empire, where slow cooking is king, and every simmer tells a story. The heart of every Mughal feast pulsed within the art of dum cooking, a method that's part magic, part patience, and all about locking in flavor. Picture a heavy sealed pot where rice meat and spices gently stew together over the lowest heat imaginable, often under a bed of glowing embers. The word dum itself means to breathe in, capturing how the steam circulates inside, infusing every grain and morsel with a delicate balance of taste. You watch, maybe a bit envious, as the slow simmer bubbles quietly beneath the lid, teasing your senses without rushing a single second. Dum cooking wasn't just a technique, it was an exercise in trust, trusting time and heat to work their magic without interference. Historians still argue whether the origins of dum stemmed directly from Persian culinary influences or evolved uniquely in Mughal kitchens, but what's clear is that it became synonymous with imperial dining. It was a slow-cooked dance, a symphony where every spice had its moment to shine without drowning out the others. In practice, cooks would seal the pot's lid with dough or cloth, creating a tight environment where moisture couldn't escape. This method kept all the aromas locked inside, allowing even tougher cuts of meat or sturdy grains to soften and mingle over hours. You could almost hear the pot whispering secrets as it breathed its fragrant steam into the surrounding kitchen. One quirky tidbit is that some recipes called for placing small holes in the dough seal to let out excess steam, but only just enough, so the pressure inside the pot built slowly and evenly. It's like the kitchen version of breathing exercises, slow inhales, measured exhales, but no hasty bursts. You might imagine cooks standing vigil over these pots like monks guarding sacred texts, checking embers and adjusting coals with a calm patience that today's microwave generation would find medieval in more ways than one. While dum cooking was clearly revered, scholars still debate its precise route into Mughal cuisine. Was it a direct import from Persian culinary tradition, or a synthesis born from Indian and Central Asian techniques? Regardless, the technique perfectly embodied the empire's ethos, taking something simple and elevating it through artful patience. As the pot simmers, the room fills with a heady perfume of saffron, cardamom, and slow-cooked meat juices. You might catch yourself daydreaming of this slow transformation, the alchemy of heat and time, turning raw ingredients into regal delicacies. It's easy to see why the art of dum became a cornerstone of Mughal cooking, because some things you just can't rush. You wander into the sprawling Mughal kitchens, more labyrinth than room, where the heat rises in waves, mixing with the thick aromas of simmering spices and baking breads. It's a hive of activity, yet strangely orderly, with cooks' assistants and spice merchants weaving through the chaos like dancers in a slow, practiced ballet. The kitchens weren't just places for cooking. They were the empire's heartbeat, churning out meals that could feed a small army, all while safeguarding culinary secrets tighter than the emperor's treasury. These imperial kitchens were legendary for their size and complexity. Some accounts speak of hundreds of staff working in shifts, wielding massive copper vessels and wooden ladles as if orchestrating a grand symphony. You can almost hear the rhythmic chopping of onions, the slap of dough against stone, and the bubbling of countless pots, all blending into one mesmerizing soundtrack. Among the secrets guarded were recipes passed down orally, often between generations of chefs who swore oaths to keep them hidden from prying outsiders. There was a mystique to Mughal cooking, almost a cult-like reverence. It's said some chefs even used coded ingredients, or secret spice blends, ensuring that no rival court could replicate the exact flavors. It's a culinary cloak-and-dagger scenario you wouldn't expect from centuries ago, yet here it is steeped in tradition. Quirky enough, some kitchens reportedly had their own animal handlers tending to live birds and goats on site, ensuring the freshest ingredients without delay. Picture a royal kitchen where the boundaries between market farm and cooking space blurred into one seamless operation. That's commitment to freshness, or perhaps just an early form of farm-to-table dining centuries before it became trendy. Historians still argue whether these kitchens were more about extravagance and display or genuine innovation in culinary arts. Were they simply producing vast quantities for political showmanship, or were these spaces true incubators of food culture? The truth probably lies somewhere deliciously in between. As you imagine these kitchens, think of the dedication required, not just physical stamina, but a slow, mindful approach to cooking that prized time over haste. The hustle was real, but so was the reverence for patience. Every dish that emerged was a product of countless hands, simmering coals, and silent, guarded rituals. So next time you wait for a slow cooker to beep, remember those sprawling Mughal kitchens where every simmer was a carefully guarded secret. You breathe in deeply as the intoxicating world of Mughal spices unfolds before you. Each one a story, a journey, a history in itself. Imagine golden saffron threads, delicate and costly, the kind that turned simple rice into royal treasure. Cardamom pods bursting with floral warmth. Cinnamon sticks curling like ancient scrolls, whispering secrets of trade routes stretching from the east to the west. These spices weren't just flavor agents, they were symbols of wealth, power, and cultural fusion, slowly simmered into every dish to create that unmistakable Mughal magic. Saffron, often called red gold, was especially prized. Harvested painstakingly by hand, a tiny pinch could color entire dishes, imparting a subtle honeyed aroma that made the humble rice shimmer with imperial elegance. You can almost see the caravans trudging through deserts and mountains, guarded by armed escorts, all to ensure that these precious spices arrived intact to the kitchens of Delhi or Agra. Cardamom added a bright, slightly sweet touch, balancing heavier meat stews with its fresh herbal notes. Its use in Mughal cuisine reflected a broader Persian influence, a nod to the empire's Central Asian roots, but it was adapted and embraced uniquely in Indian kitchens. Think of it as a flavor ambassador, gently bridging continents through your taste buds. Interestingly, some spice blends were rumored to include rare or even now forbidden ingredients, sparking scholarly debates about the authenticity and safety of certain recipes. Historians still argue whether some of the more extravagant spice mixes were mythologized or truly used. Either way, they add a dash of mystery to the story. You might chuckle imagining that while the Mughal court was busy savoring these exotic flavors, common folk probably grumbled about the high price of spices, wondering why their simple dal couldn't have a touch of that saffron glow. Still, the empire's culinary culture was a slow stew of influences, innovations, and tastes that layered over centuries, simmering into something entirely new. So, As you lean back and let these scents swirl around you, think of spices as more than just seasonings. They're storytellers, tiny potent time capsules that transformed everyday ingredients into majestic feasts. And in the Mughal kitchen, slow cooking was the perfect way to coax every whisper and note out of these precious gifts from faraway lands. You settle into the gentle rhythm of slow simmering, the kind that feels less like cooking and more like a patient meditation. In the Mughal kitchen, speed was the enemy. The flames under those massive pots barely flickered just enough to keep the stew bubbling, quietly coaxing flavors to marry and mature over hours, sometimes even days. It wasn't just about taste, it was about timing, texture, and the delicate dance of heat and humidity. Slow cooking transformed tough cuts of meat into tender morsels and grain into clouds of fragrant softness. Imagine yourself watching a pot sealed with dough steam hissing softly at the edges, like a secret being told only to those patient enough to listen. This method ensured moisture never escaped, making every bite juicy and infused with rich layered flavor. Slow simmering was like an orchestra tuning itself. It demanded respect and calm. The importance of patience in cooking is something many of us might overlook today, with microwaves and instant meals dominating our kitchens. But for the Mughals, the slow burn was a deliberate choice, almost spiritual. They believed that rushing food robbed it of its soul, a belief that feels refreshingly wholesome in our era of fast everything. You could say they were the original slow food movement long before it had a catchy name. Historians still debate the precise origins of this reverence for slow cooking. Was it inherited from Persian culinary tradition, or an innovation born in the bustling courts of Delhi and Agra? Regardless, the consensus is clear. Slow cooking was the hallmark of Mughal gastronomy, a technique elevated to art. Fun to imagine some royal cooks reportedly used special coals made from fragrant woods like sandalwood to impart subtle aromas during slow cooking. It's the culinary equivalent of laying down a scented carpet under your meal. This sensory layering speaks volumes about how much thought went into every detail. So next time you let your stew bubble quietly on the stove, picture those ancient kitchens where slow simmering was not just a technique, but a celebration of time itself. Patience was an ingredient, and it was well worth the wait. You begin to taste the lasting legacy of Mughal slow cooking in the kitchens of India today, where centuries-old techniques still simmer gently beneath the surface of everyday meals. The empire may have faded, but its culinary fingerprints remain etched on spices, recipes, and rituals across the subcontinent. Think of biryanis layered with fragrant rice and tender meat, kebabs grilled to smoky perfection, and rich curries simmered for hours, all echoing the slow, deliberate methods perfected in imperial courts. Modern Indian cuisine, vibrant and varied, owes much to the Mughal approach, the patient melding of flavors and textures, the layering of spices, and the use of slow cooking to deepen taste. Street vendors, home cooks, and five-star chefs alike owe a nod to those long-ago kitchens where patience was king. You might find it fascinating that many slow-cooked dishes have evolved differently in regional pockets. Hyderabad's biryani, for example, carries its own distinct character, yet still pays homage to Mughal roots. Historians still argue about the degree to which Mughal cuisine integrated local Indian influences versus remaining true to Central Asian traditions. Was it a fusion born of conquest or coexistence? The debate continues, but the delicious outcome is undeniable. A rich tapestry of flavors that tells a story of cultural blending. Quirky enough, some modern chefs even experiment with ancient cooking vessels inspired by Mughal designs like handy pots to recreate that perfect slow-cooked aroma and texture. It's a culinary time travel, blending nostalgia with innovation. As you imagine these flavors mingling on your tongue, you realize that slow cooking is more than a technique. It's a living tradition. It connects you to centuries of history, whispers of imperial courts, and the steady, patient rhythm of kitchens that understood the power of time. So next time you savor a slow-cooked curry or biryani, remember you're tasting history one delicious bite at a time. You drift into the sweeter side of the Mughal table, where desserts weren't rushed affairs, but slow-cooked masterpieces that required just as much patience as the main courses. Imagine creamy kheer rice, simmered in thickened milk, spiced with cardamom and saffron, its surface slowly thickening into a luscious golden custard over gentle heat. These desserts were the perfect slow-finished notes, to long elaborate feasts comforting and indulgent like a soft lullaby after the richness of spiced meats. The Mughal penchant for sweets was legendary. Their kitchens often devoted as much time to slow-cooking desserts As to the savory dishes, knowing that the final course needed to leave a lasting impression. Slow cooking allowed sugars to caramelize, subtly creating deep layered flavors rather than sharp, overpowering sweetness. You might imagine a cook stirring a pot of rabri, thickened milk, sweetened with jaggery and layered with crushed pistachios, their eyes patiently watching the transformation. Historians still argue whether certain sweet recipes originated in the Mughal courts or were adapted from local Indian traditions, but it's clear that the empire embraced and elevated these treats into art. It was a cultural exchange simmering slowly in the kitchen, much like their savory dishes. A quirky fact, some desserts even used rosewater and edible silver leaf to add luxury and subtle floral notes, an edible sparkle fit for emperors. Picture the delight of guests as they were served these delicate, slowly crafted sweets, each bite a whisper of sophistication and calm. As you imagine the final course arriving, think of the slow drip of honey, the soft crunch of nuts, and the gentle warmth of spices lingering on your palate. In the Mughal kitchen, dessert wasn't a quick afterthought, but a deliberate, slow celebration of flavor and time, a sweet embrace to end a majestic meal. You find yourself amid the gentle clatter of silverware and the low murmur of courtiers, where every meal is not just eaten, but performed. Mughal feasting etiquette transformed dining into an elaborate ritual, where slow pacing and graceful gestures conveyed status, respect, and a shared cultural language. Imagine noble guests reclining on plush cushions, their hands expertly wielding spoons and fingers alike, as servants glided quietly to refill plates and pour sherbet. Each movement choreographed like a slow, delicate dance. Meals could stretch for hours, with courses arriving in deliberate succession, encouraging leisurely eating and conversation. This unhurried pace was as much about savoring food as reinforcing social hierarchy, who sat where who was served first, and how politely one accepted or declined a dish. It's easy to picture a noble subtly signaling their approval by a slight nod or the careful placement of their silverware, while a newcomer fumbled through unspoken rules under watchful eyes. Feasting was about more than just food. It was a show of imperial power, hospitality, and refinement. Historians still argue how much of this etiquette was genuinely observed daily versus staged for special occasions. But either way, it shaped the way food was experienced. A quirky touch: some emperors were known to favor certain table manners, like eating with just the right finger, or refusing to eat if the food wasn't piping hot, because slow cooking didn't mean lukewarm after all. Imagine the subtle drama when a dish arrived not quite up to snuff. So as you imagine these ritualized meals, think of the slow unfolding of social cues, the measured sips of cooling drinks, and the graceful pauses between bites. The Mughal feast was a slow-moving play, where every gesture and taste mattered, making the act of eating a richly layered experience beyond mere hunger. You follow the shifting seasons, noticing how the Mughal kitchens adapted their slow-cooked meals to nature's subtle rhythms. Imagine the emperor's table reflecting the bounty of spring's tender greens, the summer's cooling fruits, and the hearty warming stews of winter, each dish a slow-cooked homage to the natural cycle. Seasonal ingredients dictated what simmered in those grand pots, creating a culinary calendar that balanced indulgence with the earth's offerings. Seasonal slow cooking wasn't just practical, it was an art form. In summer, lighter, mildly spiced dishes cooled the body, often paired with fragrant herbs and fresh vegetables that barely needed hours in the pot. Come winter, slow-cooked meats and thick gravies provided warmth and sustenance, the long simmer drawing out deep, comforting flavors. This harmony between food and season reflected a deep understanding of health and environment. Historians still argue how much Ayurvedic principles influenced Mughal cooking, especially regarding seasonal adjustments. Was it a deliberate integration or a coincidental overlap? Either way, the seasonal dance added a thoughtful layer to the slow cooking tradition. Quirkily, some royal cooks reportedly timed their cooking to lunar phases or auspicious days, believing that these cosmic rhythms could enhance flavor or digestion, a belief blending slow cooking with slow mysticism. You can almost picture a kitchen calendar marked with stars and moon phases alongside spice inventories. As you imagine the ebb and flow of seasons in the kitchen, picture the slow simmer of dishes changing with the weather, lighter broths giving way to rich, hearty stews, all respecting time and nature. The Mughal slow cookers weren't just chefs, they were seasonal poets crafting meals that whispered with the passage of time and the world outside. You dive into the layered story behind fragrant biryani, that iconic slow-cooked dish that's as much a puzzle as a pleasure. Picture steaming rice layered with marinated meat, fried onions, nuts, and spices all sealed and cooked together over a low flame, each grain infused with the mingling aromas of the empire. Biryani isn't just food, it's a culinary riddle wrapped in history and debate. Historians still argue fiercely about biryani's origins. Was it a Persian import brought by the Mughals, or did it develop locally in the kitchens of India? Some say it was a royal creation designed to satisfy hungry armies with something both nourishing and transportable, while others suggest it evolved from simpler rice dishes gradually layered with spices and meat. Regardless of its exact lineage, biryani exemplifies the art of slow cooking perfected in Mughal kitchens. What's fascinating is the regional variation. Hyderabad's biryani, for example, is celebrated for its saffron-infused rice and tender meat cooked in the dum style, while Kolkata's version includes potatoes and a subtler spice blend reflecting local tastes and histories. These variations show how slow cooking adapts and evolves, much like the empire's own diverse cultural fabric. A quirky detail: some old recipes called for wrapping the pot in a wet cloth to trap steam even better, or placing hot coals atop the lid to ensure even heat, almost like a slow cooker before electricity. You can almost hear the cooks whispering tips across generations, perfecting the technique in the flickering kitchen light. As you savor the idea of biryani, think of it as a slow symphony of flavor and texture, each layer playing its part in a carefully timed performance. It's a dish that embodies patience, precision, and the timeless power of slow cooking to transform simple ingredients into a royal feast. You step outside the palace walls into the bustling markets and street corners where the echoes of Mughal slow cooking ripple through everyday life. Vendors offer fragrant kebabs, slow-roasted over charcoal, and stews simmered gently in clay pots, filling narrow alleys with mouth-watering smells. These humble stalls may lack the opulence of imperial kitchens, but they carry the same legacy: slow cooking, as a way to build flavor, community, and comfort. Street food vendors adapted slow cooking techniques to fit their rhythms. A slow-grilled Sikh kebab, for example, would cook over embers just long enough to keep juicy and tender without drying out. You can almost hear the sizzling, the gentle turn of skewers, and the eager anticipation of hungry customers lining up. It's an everyday performance of the same patience and care once reserved for emperors. Historians still debate how much imperial culinary culture filtered down into popular cuisine versus developing independently. Was slow cooking a top-down influence or a natural evolution shaped by local needs? Either way, the slow flame burned bright in kitchens large and small. A quirky note: some street vendors used secret spice blends passed down through generations, echoing the guarded recipes of royal chefs, but adapted for the masses. Imagine the sly smile of a vendor knowing their slow-cooked biryani held a pinch of imperial magic. As you imagine yourself savoring these street delicacies, think of slow cooking as the great equalizer, transforming simple ingredients with time, care, and tradition. From palace banquets to market stalls, the Mughal spirit of slow meals lives on, inviting everyone to pause, taste, and enjoy. You settle down with a warm cup of tea steeped slowly to coax out every delicate flavor, and realize that the ritual of slow brewing was just as important to the Mughal dining experience as the rich spiced dishes. Imagine tiny leaves swirling in a pot of simmering water, their aroma gradually unfolding like a whispered story, calming and steadying the senses after a long feast. Tea wasn't just a drink. It was a slow, mindful pause in the rhythm of the meal. The Mughals introduced refined tea rituals influenced by Persian and Central Asian traditions, transforming simple infusions into luxurious experiences. Brewing often took time, sometimes minutes, sometimes longer, allowing subtle flavors like cardamom, rose, or mint to gently meld into the warm liquid. You can almost feel the soothing warmth spreading through your fingers as you cradle the cup. Historians still argue whether the Mughal tea culture was a direct precursor to India's famed chai traditions or a parallel development. Either way, the slow brewing techniques shaped how tea was savored across centuries, becoming a symbol of hospitality and comfort. A quirky tidbit: some tea brewers used small clay or copper pots designed to retain heat evenly, ensuring a gentle simmer rather than a harsh boil. It's like a spa treatment for tea leaves, slow and indulgent. Picture a tea master carefully watching the pot, knowing that rushing would spoil the delicate balance. As you imagine the slow drip of tea pouring into tiny cups, think of it as the perfect counterpoint to the rich feasts, a gentle calming close to a meal steeped in time and tradition. The Mughal slow brew wasn't just about flavor. It was a mindful moment inviting you to breathe, sip, and savor life's quieter pleasures. You find yourself surrounded by the chatter and laughter of a Mughal gathering where slow meals are as much about connection as cuisine. Picture nobles, poets, and courtiers lounging on lush carpets, sharing stories and debates as plates of slow-cooked food pass from hand to hand. The meal is a social ritual, a slow unfolding of flavors and friendships alike. In these moments, food becomes a catalyst for conversation, each bite sparking memory or opinion, every shared dish a bridge between people. The slow pace encourages presence, forcing diners to linger over tastes and talk, savoring not just the meal, but the company. It's easy to imagine debates over poetry and politics stretching well past the final course. Historians still argue how inclusive these gatherings were. Did they bridge social divides or reinforce them? Either way, the slow meals fostered a unique social fabric, weaving together guests with threads of flavor and time. Quirkily, some gatherings featured musical accompaniment with soft instruments, setting a gentle pace, reminding everyone that this was not a race, but a ritual. The food, music, and talk flowed together in a slow, deliberate harmony. As you picture these social feasts, think of slow cooking as more than a culinary technique. It's a way of life, a gentle pause to appreciate connection, culture, and the shared human experience. The Mughal slow meal was a slow dance of taste and time, inviting you to join in and linger just a little longer. You feel the subtle fade of an empire reflected in the slow unraveling of its culinary traditions, where kitchens once bustling with energy began to quiet and simmer less often. The Mughal dynasty, after centuries of grandeur, faced political turmoil, shifting power, and the rise of new rulers, all of which cast long shadows over its once glorious feasts. The slow-cooked meals that once symbolized power and culture started to wane, their recipes and rituals slowly slipping into obscurity or blending into emerging cuisines. It's easy to imagine royal kitchens growing smaller, their treasured cooks retiring or scattered as new tastes and fast-changing times favored quicker, less elaborate fare. Historians still argue how much this culinary decline was due to political change versus evolving social tastes. Was it a deliberate distancing from old imperial ways, or simply the natural course of history's flow? The answer likely lies somewhere in the simmering mix of both. A quirky historical note: some royal recipes survived only because wandering chefs memorized and passed them down orally, almost like culinary folklore, often adapted to local ingredients and styles. Imagine these recipes as fragile embers carried carefully from one generation to the next, keeping the fire alive in small, intimate kitchens. As you contemplate this slow decline, think of it not as an end, but as a transformation, a soft fade, where the essence of Mughal slow cooking infused the diverse culinary landscape that followed. Even as the empire's banners fell, the spirit of its patient, richly layered meals lived on quietly in kitchens and hearts. You arrive at the modern plate, where the legacy of Mughal slow cooking lives on in the comforting meals you might enjoy today. Whether at home, a local restaurant, or a street stall bustling with life. The rich aromatic biryanis, the tender kebabs, the thick, slow-simmered curries, all bear the unmistakable imprint of those imperial kitchens where patience and time were key ingredients. This tradition, passed down and transformed, has become part of everyday culture, connecting you to a centuries-old culinary story with every bite. Slow cooking today is both a nod to history and a practical choice, a way to deepen flavors, tenderize tough cuts, and create dishes that nourish body and soul. In an age of instant everything, embracing this slow legacy feels like a gentle rebellion, a reminder that some things are worth waiting for. Whether it's a homemade stew bubbling quietly on the stove, or a carefully prepared restaurant biryani, the spirit of Mughal slow cooking simmers quietly in kitchens worldwide. Historians still debate the extent to which modern dishes remain faithful to original recipes, or have morphed into entirely new forms. Yet the continuous thread is unmistakable: slow cooking as a ritual and art, and a way to savor life's richness. It's a tradition that invites you to pause, breathe, and enjoy the unfolding layers of flavor and memory. You might smile knowing that when you next sit down to a slow-cooked meal, you're not just eating food, you're tasting history, patience, and the whispers of an empire long past, but never forgotten. So rest easy, knowing the legacy of those sleepy Mughal meals lives on warming hearts and kitchens alike, one slow simmer at a time. Slow, rich flavors fade softly now as you let the stories settle like the last glow of embers under a heavy pot. The world outside quiets and you feel the comforting warmth of time, well spent, not rushed but savored. The past hums gently in your mind, a lullaby of spices, steam, and slow kitchens that knew the art of patience. Tonight the spirit of those ancient meals wraps around you like a soft blanket, inviting you to rest, to dream, and to carry a piece of that slow magic into your own quiet moments.